to the outside world, I was like, quote unquote, very successful for my age. I was like 19.
Because you actually showed an August pad with real blood on it.
This tampon tax is unfair and consumers shouldn't have to pay for this.
This episode of Networth and Chill is brought to you by Marshalls. I love sharing new tips on how to make the most of your money. And one of the biggest misconceptions about looking good is that you have to spend a lot. And I'll be real with you, I want those high quality items that'll last, but I'm also on the hunt for the best deal. How can I dress in brand name on-trend pieces without maxing out my credit cards? My go-to place to do that is Marshalls, where I know I can get the brands I love at 20 to 60% off retail prices. Visit a store or head to marshalls.com to see what good stuff you can find today. What's up, rich friends? Welcome to another episode of Networth and Chill. I'm your host, Vivian Tu, aka your rich BFF and your favorite Wall Street girly. And normally when I jump into the studio, I come ready to show up and show out. But if we're being honest, I feel like hot garbage today. I have a headache, stabbing cramps, and muscle aches. And I'm guessing some of the besties listening already know what's going on. I'm on my period. I, like 1.8 billion other people in the world, menstruate every single month. And I'm lucky. When it comes to my cycle, it sucks, but I'm able to purchase all the things I need to manage it: tampons, pads, period undies, Advil for cramps, whatever gummy candy I can get my hands on, and anything else I might need. But some people aren't so lucky. 16.9 million people in the US alone live in period poverty. Essentially, they can't afford the super necessary items that they need to care for themselves during their period. On average, most people are spending anywhere between $20 to $40 per month on period care, not even including the 4 to 7% tax on these necessary items that many states still charge. And frankly, none of that seems fair. So let me introduce you to someone who's not only trying to change the perception of periods, but the period industry itself. She's a social entrepreneur, content creator, and co-founder of August, Nadya Okamoto. Welcome to Networth and Chill.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited for you being here. We are old friends, but before we get started, I need to ask you an incredibly personal, probing topic and question. Do you remember your first period and what was it like?
Yes, I do. It's like seared into my memory. I got my first period when I was 12.
Same.
And I remember it very vividly because I was about to go to the airport to fly and visit my dad. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, dad's periods, you don't immediately. It's a little ick, a little awkward. And I just had to go pee and pulled my pants down. And I think my mind was either I shit my pants because it was brown. Yeah. Or it was, I'm internally bleeding and I'm about to die.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I knew what a period was.
Right.
But
In theory.
But like, there's so many details and I think it's so jarring when you get your period. Even if you know blood is coming, nobody tells you how much blood it's going to be. Nobody tells you it's going to be goopy or have some solids, just solid chunks in it, or that it might be brown, right? But yeah, my first period is something that I think about a lot. I actually wrote it as like the introduction to my book because I think it was like, this is why my first introduction to like this being my whole career eventually.
When that happened to you, what did you do? Like, did you talk to your friends about it? Did you talk to your mom? Did you call her? Like, I remember getting my period in middle school and coming home and being like embarrassed. Like I didn't want to tell anyone that it happened.
I was very lucky because I grew up with a single mom and two sisters. So we had an all-girl household.
Okay, nice.
We also shared one bathroom. Okay. So there was no hiding anything. Yeah. Like I remember growing up and I would always make fun of my mom because she would put her like underwear that had some blood on it and just soak them in the bathtub.
Yeah.
And so even before I got my period, like I knew what it was, but I always associated it with kind of like, I don't know, something that was gross, but very natural, right? But when I got my period, I remember like taking off my underwear, literally bringing it to shove in my mom's face, being like, like I'm dying. Because I don't think I thought it was a period. Like when I saw blood, even though I conceptually knew what a period was, it wasn't like, this is a period. It was like, this seems too messy to be a period.
Yeah. You expected like nosebleed.
Yes, exactly. And like bright red blood, like none of this chunk anything. Like it was chunky. And so for me, like I showed my mom directly and she was kind of like, made it into a celebratory sort of moment and then put me on a plane to go visit my dad.
And you've come a very, very large way from Chunk City. You are now what I like to deem a period poverty vigilante. Okay, it's cool. It's like Batman, okay? And you co-founded a nonprofit in 2014 called Period Inc. What inspired you when you were so young to like start on this journey? Because most girls were very embarrassed about this topic, and you were like, let me charge forward.
Yeah. I mean, I was not immediately like, get my period. This is amazing. I'm so confident. Like,
not like your shirt right now. It literally says gets period.
I was in middle school where I was still hiding my tampons like in my backpack. Yeah. And I remember I also used a menstrual cup super early on. And I remember...
Do you like that? Because I'm scared it'll get stuck.
No, I had like a really bad experience with it a few years ago. But it's actually something we've been talking about a lot at August, because I do think that there's a need for like more innovation around it. Anyways, but I remember being in middle school and like, you know, boys would find tampons and then shoot them around the room. And it was like such a big deal. And then everyone talked about it. And I remember like one friend I felt had betrayed me because she told some boys that I used a silicone cup. And then everybody was going around saying I was loose because I could like fit a cup. Yeah. Oh. And it was kind of wild. So I was more immediately in my early period days, like still very embarrassed about it. And then I think for me, when I was 16, I for the first time started hearing stories of period poverty. And at the time, my family was going through like a rough spot. Like we weren't living in our own home. You know, we had moved in with some friends, and I knew that like money was very, very tight. But then when I started talking to homeless women literally on my way to school, because I would have to change buses in an area that was like a lot of homelessness around, I was just always very curious about like their life story, and unexpectedly started hearing about, you know, I get my period and then I have to use toilet paper, socks, brown paper grocery bags, cardboard to take care of someone's period. And I remember meeting women and they would show me like how to make a makeshift pad out of cardboard. You rip off the side, the corrugated inside you can rub in between your hands and it becomes really soft. And for me, it was just like a complete Band-Aid ripoff, like eyes open. How have I never thought of this before? Like huge privilege check that slapped me in the face. And I became so passionate about it. And I think when you're in middle school, you know, the public school system, we had community service where it was like your assignment is to find something you care about and then go volunteer for a nonprofit. And I remember being 16, like looking up nonprofits and not being able to find any in my area that did anything about access to period products. And also at the same time, you know, talking to shelters and realizing like they don't even provide them. And so I think it was like an immediate gap. And then I think I Googled, how old do you have to be to start a nonprofit? And then it just kind of spiraled.
I absolutely love that. Can I ask you a pretty personal question? You mentioned that at the time you were living not in your own home, like you were still trying to like go to school and be like a normal kid. Like, did you find that the financial hardships your family was facing was preventing you from doing any of the things that you potentially wanted to do, like whether it be, you know, create this nonprofit or do anything? Like, how did that ever hold you back?
I don't think so. I think if anything, it kind of it motivated me to just hustle, you know? And I know hustle carries like a lot of negative connotation, hustle bro, you know. But I think, you know, being 16, I was also the scholarship kid at this very expensive private school, like to the point that like I was literally the poster child for financial aid. Like at the galas, they would
the literal poster.
They would like, I was on the poster, I was on the website. Like at the galas, they would put me up on stage and be like, talk about trauma, you know. But so I was like the scholarship kid, but I think I knew, like, I remember getting to that high school, they had no free and reduced lunch, and I'd been on free and reduced lunch all of middle school. But my mom really, like, she always encouraged me, if we can't afford the lunch, go talk to someone about it. And so like they created free and reduced lunch because of me and my sisters, you know? And then it was like, bus tickets are expensive. So they created some sort of, you know, stipend literally to get me a bus ticket. And so I think for me, I was always trained like, you know, there are financial obstacles, but you just need to advocate for them. And I think for me, I also saw my mom do that, right? Like, you know, we were in a tough position, and she was like, we're moving in with friends, we're gonna rent out the condo that we have, and that's gonna be what feeds us, you know? Like I saw my mom really, you know, kind of have that mentality of like, we just have to make it work. And so I think that when I was embarking on this nonprofit thing, it was like, I have no money to put behind this, but I think I know something about fundraising because I see people doing bake sales at school.
Yeah.
And so when we started fundraising, it was literally like I would talk to any parents and ask them for like $5, $10. And then I got in trouble once because I took like the parent directory that you get and I was writing handwritten cards to all the rich kid parents and literally like not my friends' parents, just like literally any parents I knew. Hi, I'm Nadya. I'm a sophomore at this school. I care a lot about this issue. Did you know that if you don't have period products, please, donate at this PayPal or GoFundMe? And I would mail those. And then I got in trouble for using the parent directory.
Wait, how did they find out?
Because all these parents were like, who's
snitching
this
on
bitch? Like, how did she get my address? But it became that. And then I remember just Googling like, oh, what is a grant? How do I apply for a grant? And my mom had worked in nonprofits a bit, and so she would encourage me, this is what it looks like to write a grant application. And I would literally apply to grants like before I went to sleep. Like I would just write, because most of them are just like some web form that asks complicated questions.
And you're doing so much during this time. I'm curious, do you have like one piece of advice or something that your mom taught you that helped you be so resilient?
I honestly think that, like, looking back on it, it was, like, a very unhealthy level of, hustle.
Yeah.
Like, my mom, if anything, throughout high school was like, girl, calm down, rest. But, like, I started this nonprofit on top of, I put a lot of pressure on myself to get into Harvard, specifically.
Yeah.
Like, I started stressing about what college I was going to go to when I was 9 years old. And my mom sent me to therapy because she was like, you're 9, you should not be studying acceptance rates to like Stanford and Harvard. But my mom had told me pretty early on, like, we don't have money for you to like be able to go to college unless you go to Harvard or someplace with a big endowment because then it'll be free, you know? Because like we always made below that poverty line so that I knew if I got in with need blind, applications, it would be free. And so for me, that was like,
you had to.
I had to.
Do or die.
Yeah. And my mom had gone to Harvard too. So like I knew that I had the privilege of like, I knew it was within grasp, but I like overcompensated. I was like doing the nonprofit, but the nonprofit to me was like my passion project. But like I was doing all this other stuff that I thought would help me get into college. So I was like doing 16 clubs. I was like president of mock trial and MUN and did ballet, was on the baseball team, like did all of the stuff. But I think for me, it was from a place of fear. It was like, I need to get into school. I need to get out of this situation. I need to figure out a good career. I need to, it was a lot of anxiety. And like in my junior and senior year of high school, I was like regularly passing out and going to the emergency room for exhaustion. And all the nurses knew me because I'd be wheeled into this fucking emergency room and they'd all be like, girl's back because she didn't sleep. Like it was not healthy. And that's why I say like complicated relationship with hustle, because this is like 2014, 2016, right? Like this is when hustle culture and like girl boss culture was like
peak.
Yes. Always never sleep, work till you die. And I literally did that. Yeah.
So ultimately, spoiler alert, Nadya does get into Harvard.
Yes.
And we are starting our amazing Elle Woods dream. Well, I guess she went to law school there. But so you're at Harvard and you are running this nonprofit. Let's talk about something that you have secretly told me you are quite embarrassed about now. You actually wrote a book.
Yes.
Period Power, a manifesto for the menstrual movement. What made you want to do this?
Well, at this point, by my freshman year of college, like the nonprofit was pretty big, right? Like we were, at that point had like a 7-figure budget.
Yeah.
My freshman year, we hired our first employee who was actually a graduating senior at Harvard.
Oh, nice.
And so like I feel like the organization was like becoming a real thing.
Yeah.
I was not yet paid for my job, but I was like about to be paid, I think like $40K a year.
Yeah. But that's more money than like a freshman or sophomore in college has ever seen in their life.
So to me, like it was becoming a real organization, which I was really excited about. But I felt like there was this barrier where I was doing all this speaking and interviews, press, getting asked the same questions over and over again of like, what is a period? Like, what is period poverty? Why does period stigma exist? I still get these questions today, right? Like a lot of questions like, I don't think it's stigmatized. Why do you think it's stigmatized? And I'm like, how could you not think it's stigmatized?
Because I have to slip a tampon on my sleeve to pass it to a friend.
But I felt like there were all these questions I kept having to like answer. And at the time, like, I had started taking like gender studies classes, and I just was like, oh, there are these manifestos, these books, like the Red Stockings Manifesto, Riot Girl Manifesto. Gloria Steinem wrote these amazing manifestos for like the second wave feminism of like the 1960s and 70s. And I kind of fell in love with this idea of like having a text or a manifesto that I could hand to someone and be like, this is what we're doing. But before that, so I had kind of started looking into like, what does it take to write a book? And I literally, actually before my freshman year, had Googled how to write a book, how to publish a book.
Yeah.
And I remember finding like a wiki answers, you know, where it's at step 1 and it has a little cartoon.
The wiki how.
Yeah, wiki how. And I literally just followed those steps. And it was like, email literary agents. And I made a sheet of like, you know, all literary agent emails are public. I'm 100 literary agents and sent this out to everything. I think I probably heard back from 5 and 2 said yes, you know? So, and then we eventually published with my dream publisher, Simon & Schuster. But at the same time, I was running for office, and I was like running for Cambridge City Council.
Oh, wow.
And like accidentally became the youngest Asian American political candidate in the US at the time. And I think for me, it was like a critical year of evaluating like many different career options, because you know, coming from an activist, anti-capitalist background of like nonprofits, grassroots organizing, I was starting to realize like money runs everything.
Runs everything.
I literally, to do my nonprofit job, I have to fundraise from Procter & Gamble, so, you know, Unilever, the biggest corporations to do the work, right? Corporate donors literally drive so much of the nonprofit sector.
Yeah.
Then I was running for office because I was like, okay, nonprofit seems stuck. Let me go into the public sector. And it was like, oh, we measure electability based off of how much money you raise.
Yep.
My whole job as a political candidate is to raise fucking money. And the first question I get from political consultants is, how much money do you have in the bank? I emptied my savings account into my own campaign, which was, by the way, $12,000. It wasn't that much. But like, I ended that campaign with like $0 in my bank account and was like, yeah, this isn't for me. Like, I'm never running again. But, you know, we made history with student turnout, and, you know, the campaign ended. I lost. We came in 12th out of 26 for like 9 spots. So I felt like pretty good.
Pack, yeah,
middle of the pack. But for me, honestly, I think that happened. The book came out, and I think that was the moment where I was like, I really think my future is in business. Like, there's something that I'm too frustrated by in the world of the public sector,
the
nonprofit space. And I think I really need to reconsider my ideas of wealth and capitalism. And so I changed my whole major to like study capitalism, because I really did grow up hating capitalism, like thinking it was like the worst, you know, and I still do in many ways. But I think that running for office and then coming to terms, like the research for the book and, you know, writing the book, I was really like, wow, the period stigma exists because of the industry.
Yeah.
And so like this needs to change, but they have all the power. But I think that year, like 2017, I was like, I think business is my future.
Business is the future. If you could look back today as today Nadya, what would you tell that girl?
I honestly, to sleep. Like, I think that at that point I was sleeping maybe 1 to 2 hours a night.
How are you functioning?
Barely.
Okay.
Like, I was barely functioning. I mean, I was, you know, trying to work several jobs, you know, run this nonprofit. And then I would think I was, at the time I was also a research assistant at the musicology department, like, you know, cleaning floors at a yoga studio. I was very like, I was overcommitted.
Yeah.
And I just stopped talking to my family, stopped talking to friends, was just like, the nonprofit needs to take off. The campaign is happening. Like, for literally almost a year, I canvassed for 4 to 6 hours a day. I would walk up and down the streets with my little brochures, knocking on doors, talking about like local issues, but I was exhausted. And so I think when I look back at that time, like I of course, like I look back at it and I'm like, wow, like to the outside world, I was like, quote unquote, very successful for my age. I was like 19. But like, I just remember being so depressed, like so tired, so like dissociated, and just like trying to, you know, do everything. But yeah, I think I just like, I don't really remember most of those years. I think I was just like so focused.
Like blacked the whole thing out.
Completely blacked out. Yeah.
Okay, so you make this decision. You're like, I'm going to transition from a nonprofit to focusing on business. You want to create an actual menstrual product or a company. What specifically was, you know, in your mind when you were like, I need to reinvent something that hasn't gone through a lot of innovation for, I don't know, quite some time, decades, maybe centuries. Like, yeah, the products have gotten a little bit cooler, the packaging's gotten a little bit better, but like, what made you want to create better pads, tampons, and products?
Well, I didn't immediately jump to thinking like I'm going to create my own company. It was actually like, let me try to change the current industry. So my second business was a Gen Z marketing agency that I joined that my friends had started working on. And for years, like literally Tampax Always, Kotex, like they were clients of mine. And this Gen Z marketing agency was working kind of with like the largest conglomerates on Gen Z marketing. And I was trying to push
Make tampons cool again.
Yeah, I literally was like, let me go to where these are. And I knew a lot of the kind of big whizzes at those places because they were literally donors of mine. And I had done like influencer gigs with them. Like I knew them. But for a few years, I was like, I'm going to go within the industry. I want to work within it. That's what I need to change. And so I didn't immediately jump to like, let me start my own company.
Wait, you said just influencer gigs? Like, were you already on social media building a following at that time?
But at that point, I was like 6,000 followers.
Okay.
But I was still making six figures as an influencer gig because it was like a spokesperson. And it was actually like a huge driver. Like most of it would go to the nonprofit. Right. And so like I was the biggest private donor to my nonprofit by the time I was maybe like 20. And, just continuing to kind of I basically realized I could monetize my image for like donations to the nonprofit. So did a lot of that. But I would say that for me, like, I tried for years to change these companies from within, and then I was like, they don't listen. And then I was learning things about the product that I was just not excited about. Like at the time, most pads have enough plastic for 3 to 5 plastic bags each. Oh, no wonder they feel like a plastic diaper, or like it's not as easy for them to be like, oh, we'll put the ingredients on the box. Like I was coming up against all this kind of strife that I was like, I wish I could just start from scratch. And so I would say like by, 2 years later, I was like, I really was obsessing over this idea every day. I wish I could just do it myself, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then in 2019, kind of told the nonprofit, I need to transition out, replace myself as executive director. The nonprofit is big enough that it needs a new leader, and let me step out of this consulting firm so that I can kind of have like no conflict interest and go start my own thing. And then early 2020, right before the pandemic started, decided to start this company.
And you said, you wanted to go out, start your own thing, go it alone, but you didn't. You have a co-founder.
Yeah.
How did you find this co-founder? How did you know this is the person I want, to get into bed with?
I have always had a co-founder. So even the nonprofit, my co-founder was a cis guy in my class named Vince, and he was basically the COO, right? Like I am very aware of like my weaknesses. And my weaknesses are like attention to detail, spreadsheets, anything financial, operations. Like I'm very big
Don't
picture.
worry, girlie. I'll help you after this.
Yeah. So like for me, like I've always had a co-founder.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's like, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder a few years ago, which is basically like I actually have really low self-confidence and like very low sense of self-worth. And I'm like have a lot of imposter syndrome. But I think that the way it manifests for me and like where I think it's kind of become a superpower is I'm hyper aware of like I want to like arm myself with people that I think are much smarter, much, more intelligent and strategic than me. And so I've always had a co-founder. Like there was no part of me that was like, let me be a solo entrepreneur. And so my co-founder of August is actually the original co-founder and COO of Juve Consulting, the Gen Z marketing agency. So we both kind of, left to start this. And that company has since sold to UTA earlier this year, which is really exciting.
Awesome.
So he can now say like he's an exited founder. It's very exciting. But yeah, I mean, so I've always had a co-founder, and I think that for me, like, it was a non-negotiable because I know what my strengths are, and my strengths are like direct complement with what his strengths are.
That's awesome. Okay, so you come together with this co-founder, and you're like, day one, you got a whiteboard, you're sitting at a table like this. How do you start a company?
Oh my gosh. There's no right way to do this. I think one of the things that I did not realize at the beginning, like I knew nothing about raising capital. I did not know what VC stood for. I remember having
venture capital, guys.
Venture capital. I remember pulling some of my friends at Harvard who had like taken gap years, being like, so you raise capital, like what even is that? Like, and remember like asking kind of my buddies at school to like explain a convertible note versus a safe document. What does it mean to have shares? Like literally you have to learn a whole new language, right? And, you know, I did not expect to have to raise so much money, but like, first of all, it took us months to figure out what the product was going to be. I thought it was going to be a menstrual cup. Then we did consumer, you know, kind of interviewing. Like 99% of the people did not want to use a menstrual cup, you know, kind of similar to you. It's scary, the idea of doing it.
What if it gets stuck, Nadya?
No, exactly. There's a lot of fear. And so it was like, we need to actually make a very approachable, you know, what looks exactly like the tampons and pads that you're using, but actually is much better and much cleaner. So we had to decide on what the product was, did a lot of kind of interviewing, community building, make sure that it was actually something we could do. Then it was a lot of research because tampons are a class 2 FDA approved medical device. So like you have to do a lot of research behind who are the manufacturers, what are the ethical kind of standards that we really need to hold ourselves to. And then again, I had to learn so much around if like doing beauty or apparel, I think is actually a lot easier to get started. That's why you see so many of them because the minimum quantity orders are quite small, right? If I want to do, let's say like a run of t-shirts, for example, I can buy 50 and sell those. With tampons and pads, you can't do that. There's a minimum quantity order. So like that's in the hundreds of thousands usually. Like the minimum quantity order will be like 50,000 boxes.
Boxes, not just tampons?
Like, and again, it's different per manufacturer. So there's no such thing as like, let me do a small run of a new product, right?
Let me beta test this.
Like, maybe if you truly just like bought like the most simple product, but we wanted to customize the tampons. Like there's a lot of, like our tampon just looks like a tampon maybe, but there was so much into how does the tampon open? What does the string look like? You know, what is the manufacturing process? How's the applicator? Is it compact? Is it long? Like we customize a lot of the product. And so for us, it was like we had to raise capital. Then you have to think about the cost of how does it get here? What kind of checks does it go through? Where is it warehoused? Who's doing the packaging? How do you pay for ground shipping? And then how do you think about the website? Like there's so much in it. And I remember like when we first started fundraising, I was like, we're going to raise 300K. And then it was 600K. And we ended up raising $2 million before we launched. So like over the course of the first year. And that was our pre-seed round. But so yeah, I would say the first year of the company was fundraising, getting rejected a lot. And then I was obsessing over brand. And in the middle of this, in the middle of being pre-launch and raising our pre-seed round, I went to rehab for mental health, breakdown, burnout, cancel, you know, everything. It was good. So I like had to put fundraising on hold, but going to rehab before the company launch was like the best thing in my life. It like totally saved my life. And I think I'm like such a better founder because of it.
And probably feeling a lot stronger and abled.
Hey, rich friends, you know I love to talk about the habits of rich people, and one thing they all have in common is that they find ways to keep their money. That's something my partners at Marshall's can help you with. Because rich people look the part. They're wearing high-quality brand name clothes, but what you might not realize is that they didn't pay full price. That's how they're staying rich. And while you're on your way to getting rich, you can get the same good stuff without breaking the bank by shopping at Marshall's. Head to your local Marshall's or visit marshalls.com to shop their ever-changing selection of high-quality, on-trend merchandise.
And I did want to bring up a touchy subject. You recently caught a little heat online because you actually showed an August pad with real blood on it. And normally when we see these commercials, it's like that blue Gatorade that goes on tampons and pads. What made you want to use a liquid that either was blood or looked like blood versus using the blue Gatorade?
I mean, it's interesting because, and I think this is where I always say, like, again, out the gate of getting my period was never like immediately so proud of my period. Like it took me 6 years working in the period space to even consider putting my blood online. But it was as soon as we launched the company, so like June 2021, when I started getting on TikTok, and I had 0 followers when we launched the company. And I think it's a big misconception is now people see that I have like 5 million followers online and they're like, oh, she's a TikToker that started a brand. But like, no, when I started the brand, I think I had 13K on Instagram. Like I had no TikTok.
That was just to support your nonprofit. You were literally making money to put into your nonprofit.
But it was like I wasn't an influencer. I was like a micro spokesperson.
Yeah.
Like I was always signed as like a spokesperson. But, you know, who could talk about this issue. But I started getting on TikTok as a way to like, okay, actually, if you look at the P&L of a company, we need to lower our cost of acquisition and have our revenue grow. So like someone needs to grow organically and we can't pay a bunch of money for paid marketing and influencers. We need to like, someone needs to go viral. And so I was just making content. And then when I started just showing the pads and the tampons, immediately people didn't want to see the product. But then people who were curious were like, if it's more sustainable, how can you prove that it works just as well, right? Because we think like a straw. Like I hate paper straws.
Yeah.
We think
they disintegrate.
Disintegrate. We think more sustainable products do not work as well. Yeah. And so the question I was getting was like, how does it really work? You know? And I think immediately, I don't know, like there was not a lot of thinking. It was like, okay, they're asking me how it works. I just need to show them how it works. And I was like changing my pad, like, this is how it works. You know, it just felt very obvious to me. It was not a very well thought out, like, it was just like, they asked, I'm answering.
Yeah.
And similarly, like, I think I was seeing all these, you know, small businesses come to life on TikTok where it was like, I started this swimsuit brand. This is what it looks like on me.
Yeah.
And there's something powerful about seeing it worn, right?
Yeah.
And there is so much about specifically our pads that I wanted to show. Like our night pads have this second wing. It covers my butt. You can't see my butt crack. Let me show you how it works. Like it just felt very natural.
You just wanted to show people the real deal versus like this fake, I guess, like cookie cutter version of like what a product could look like on a perfect body in a perfect situation where blue liquid fell onto it instead of real blood.
Yeah. And I mean, also, I think, you know, at that point, we'd been working in secret on this product for a year and a half. I think I was also just like so proud of what we had created.
Yeah.
Like, you just wanted to show everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And you talk a little bit about period poverty and the unfairness of it all. And the thing that, from a finance perspective, that I think is just so unfair is something that you're very passionate about. The fact that there are still taxes on necessary products. You mentioned earlier, I believe you said it was a class 2 or what, FDA product? Yeah. A class 2 FDA product. If this is, you know, monitored by the FDA, why are we still paying taxes on these menstrual products?
Because we live in a patriarchy, you know, like, yeah. So in 2014, the tampon tax, as it's nicknamed, existed in 40 states. Now it's in 20 states 10 years later. So we've made progress.
Yeah.
It's something that I've like, it's been a through line of my work through the last 10 years. I'm very passionate about it. Because the tampon tax is not going to solve period poverty because it's affecting people who already buy period products, but it does make a difference, right? If it's in some places up to like 10%, it's an added $1, $2 that you're paying in taxes.
Every single time.
Every single time, right? And to me, like, the issue is that not with having a sales tax on things in general. It's that there are many products that are exempt because they're medical necessities or because they've been deemed necessities in some way. So Rogaine, Viagra.
Rogaine is a medical necessity?
Old male hair growth and erections products do not have a tax. In some states, vending machine sales, cowboy boots, chapstick, cereal. Like that's where it gets fucked up, right?
Yeah.
My issue is not with the sales tax in existence.
General,
it's like the fact that other things are exempt that make it that it makes no sense why tampons and pads are not exempt, right? Like, I think these products are medical necessities and should have this exemption. And when you look at, like, the list of things that are exempt, it's ridiculous, right? And so, so today there are 20 states that have the tampon tax. It literally costs these states nothing to take it down.
Right.
It's, like, less than 0.5% of the overall state budget. And, you know, I have seen that the backlash that we get to taking down the tampon tax is stupid. It's like, oh, we need to make up the revenue. We'd have to increase taxes on tobacco and alcohol. And I'm like, do it. But the lobbyists for those industries are so much stronger than us, right?
Of course.
And it's such an archaic law that not a lot of people know about. And that's why I care so much about social media, because I've seen in these states, when we make a lot of noise on social media and we change public opinion and the governor starts getting heat for the tampon tax, that governor with a sign of a document can take it down. Governor Newsom took it down, governor of Ohio, and it's a bipartisan issue, right? But to me, the tampon tax is a big deal because it's very symbolic of we do not have period products nationally in schools, shelters, and prisons. Food stamps still didn't cover period products. FSA, HSA savings just started covering them like 2 years ago. And like the tampon tax is literally the legal precedent that period products are a luxury, non-essential item. And our governmental system works off of legal precedents. And so we need to take down the tampon tax so that we can make the argument in other places for period products to be free in schools, in shelters, in prisons. And we still don't have that accessibility. And like my thinking is that period products should be just as accessible as toilet paper.
Yeah.
You know, you still buy toilet paper when you go to the store, but you also expect it to be in every public restroom that you go to. And for schools, there's funding for it. For prisons, there's access to toilet paper. It's not this commodity that prisoners have to, or inmates have to buy from the commissary.
Yeah.
Like, I feel very strongly that the accessibility should be just like toilet paper.
Yeah. It's a human right.
It's a human right. And so with August, like, again, like I fought for the tampon tax on the nonprofit space, raised a lot of money to like run these campaigns for it. And something I was excited about when we started August was like, let's just be a tampon tax-free brand. So wherever legally possible, if you bought products from us at the beginning online, we just didn't charge the tampon tax. We absorbed it. And
then you teamed up with a bunch of really cool brands to actually create a coalition called the Tampon Tax Back Coalition.
Yeah.
Tell me all about that.
So we started originally doing it as soon as we launched in Target of being like, well, we don't control that, you know, transaction, but we still don't, we want to take a stand against a tampon tax. So we created this way where if you see a tax being charged to you on your receipt, you can text us a picture of a receipt and we'll Venmo you back for that tax, right? And so it's us completely eating into our revenue. It's not even something that we're getting that tax revenue in the first place, but it was just kind of a symbolic like, this tampon tax is unfair and consumers shouldn't have to pay for this. And then after a few months, we were like, wait, let's just get all the other brands as much as we can to do this. So we recruited about 8 other brands, created the coalition. So, you know, the tampontaxback.com, if you go to the website, there's one phone number, you text the receipt for any of these brands and we'll Venmo you back for whatever tax that is. And to me, it was kind of like, you know, coalitions are not new in the nonprofit space, right?
Yeah.
But it was exciting to bring it into the company space where usually we're pitted against each other as like staunch competitors. But the thing is like a lot of these founders I've known since I was a teenager. You know, like I've known the founders of Diva Cup and Salt and Honey Pot like literally since I was a teenager because they were donating products to the nonprofit. They're still donating products to Period, right? And so for me, like it felt like a big full circle moment to be able to kind of hold hands with these other founders and be like, look, I know on paper I'm a competitor, but like we all believe, and I think this is like the magic of female founders. And when we talk about like reimagining capitalism, like there is a world of collaboration to say we can put purpose over profit or like even purpose and understand that it can be in line with profit and like come together around an issue that we really care about.
I love that so much. And you talk about the capitalism piece of it. How are you able to balance, you know, like having a for-profit company where you have investors whose expectation is for you to make money and then saying, we will eat into our own revenue because we believe that it is not right for people to be charged this tax? Like, how do you juggle your ethics, but also the need to make money?
I think that it's not even like a consideration. Like if an investor thinks that's stupid, you know, impact is not the goal or impact shouldn't be part of the goal, they just aren't the right investors for us, right? We did turn down a lot of money, you know, when we were starting. Like I remember, and it was really hard, right? Because at that point—
That's a luxury.
Yeah, and it's a total luxury, but it was in a risk. Like I remember my co-founder and I being like so exhausted from fundraising, getting rejected every day, and then having an investor say, we'll invest money if you aren't trans inclusive, if you don't post period blood. And we got that a lot.
Wait, people actually said out loud, like, they didn't want inclusivity.
If you are trans inclusive and you say trans people get periods, you will not reach women. If you show period blood, people will think you're gross. Like, and there are still investors who like, I know shit talk me behind the scenes because we turned down their money. And to them, it's like, why would you ever turn
down money?
But we turned it down. And so I think one something I'm proud of is we have a cap table of investors who are very values aligned, right? And those investors exist out there. A lot of them are women. A lot of them are women of color who are like, yes, you know, this is something that we need. But I think it's also taking a bet on a lot of like this conscious consumer, this consumer who doesn't want to be, who wants to invest their capital. Like, we live in a consumerist culture, but it feels good to buy from companies that you think are doing good, right? Like, that feels exciting. And we aren't the first brand at all to do this whole, you know, buy tampons, we donate tampons. Like, we donate products for every
Tom's
purchase.
shoes is the one example that I always think of.
But like, that isn't new, which is exciting, right? It's become more of the norm. And so I think part of it, the case that we can make is like, people buy from August partially because of the impact commitments that we have. And so you don't have to think about it as mutually exclusive of impact versus profit. Like, they can work and coexistence and support each other. The more money we make, the more impact we can make. The more impact we make, the more excited people are to support the company.
Yeah. And you come from this Gen Z marketing background. So I know these are all thoughts that are like swirling in your head. What do you think is like kind of like the next tier, the next echelon of Gen Z consumption? Like, is every brand out there going to have to start having some sort of, I don't want to say like a nonprofit spin or a nonprofit bend to them? How do you think brands actually get Gen Z consumers to care?
I honestly think that it's already happened. Like, I think that we've seen, like, with a lot of, I mean, cancel culture around brands has been because I think maybe 5-10 years ago, brands were like, oh shit, you know, commission. And I was behind some of these studies. Gen Z cares about impact. They want to buy if the company says something about sustainability. So then you see all these companies throwing on a leaf onto their packaging, you know, having some earth commitment, planting trees. But then you see greenwashing, woke washing, companies getting backlash for consumers realizing like, wait, they're just saying that, right? Yeah. The woke washing is very real. Like, commodity activism is like the academic term for it, but it's literally companies realizing that if they say they're doing good, they can sell more product and not have to back up those claims. But I actually think that there's this wave of being like, of consumers being very skeptical, right? Do they just say that? Do they believe in it, right? Do they care about DEI, or did they just make that higher because they were getting backlash and now they don't have that higher, right? I think that we're actually past the, like, for example, August is climate neutral. We don't even talk about that because it's not a differentiator anymore. Yeah. It used to be, right? Yeah. Sustainable packaging, I don't think is a differentiator. It's an expectation. And so I actually think that we've already seen this wave of companies realizing like social responsibility, ESG is like already,
a fake term.
Yeah, but it's already a norm, right? Yeah. Like, it's already an expectation. And so I actually think what is exciting is that I think we've already seen that expectation, but now it's about like, how do you, it's a fine line of like not tokenizing it and making it a DNA part of the brand rather than like something you do for clout, right? But I think that Gen Z, Gen Alpha consumers are very skeptical about it. It's like this expectation, but if you do it wrong, fuck you. You know, it's like it's a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've been so open and I think transparent about your experiences of going to rehab for mental health, like even like feeling, you know, some of the negative side effects of like cancel culture. What would you say is the biggest mistake you've made building August? And if you could go back in time, would you try to erase that?
I think that like with August, I think because August started like after rehab, I'm very proud of where we've netted out with August. Of course, there are like decisions. I mean, honestly, like there are small mistakes, right? Like, I really don't like this packaging.
Wait, why?
So like, people love our packaging, but you cannot read. You can't read. No. Some of the text is so small, right? There's small things like that, right? Yeah. Like, there are mistakes where we move too quickly, and, you know, I think that there are, you know, and I think that that's something that I think about a lot of, like, so much of my mentality is go, 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 that, like, I do make a lot of mistakes. I am not a perfectionist at all. And I think part of it is because I have this, like, insecurity of, like, if I think too much about a decision,
it won't get done.
It won't get done. Yeah. So I move very quickly. And I think that's where my co-founder is actually, like, we balance each other out because he's very thoughtful, very methodical. And so I will push things and he'll say, slow down. So like, we need that balance and harmony in our company. But like, there's that where I'm constantly trying to work on of like, you know, what is the balance? How quickly do we move? How do we avoid mistakes like that? But I think, you know, when in my earlier parts of my career, I think like the biggest mistake was I was just not thinking clearly. Like, I when you sleep 1 to 2 hours a night and you're working 3 jobs at any point in time and you have no friends and you like are dissociated and blacked out from reality, like you make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And you forget the conversations you had and I think that's why I care a lot about like paper trails. And I think one of the reasons I love content creation is like I have part of my CP, like I have like complex PTSD, and one of like, you know, the symptoms is like you have bad short-term memory. And so like I will watch videos and vlogs that I made a month ago and be like, I have like literally no recollection of this happening. And so like I love content creation because for me, like it's literally a visual diary. And I think it's been really good for like my memory and things like that. But I think that for me, like there's a lot of things that I think that I wish I did differently that honestly are big motivators for me to continue. Like I sleep 10 hours a night right now.
Ooh, 10 is great.
Yeah, I sleep 10 hours a night and I have a dog and like I have this boyfriend I've been with for 5 years. Like I very much like think of my life as like pre-rehab, post-rehab, and like just that being such a big inflection point for me.
Well, one, thank you for being so honest because I'm sure there are people listening who still feel the stigma around going to rehab. And it's clearly really worked. You are so successful and you teed me up perfectly. I want to switch gears. Now that you are at a point where August is a standalone company, how do you differentiate between August, Nadya, online, and who you are as a person?
Oh, such a hard question. I'm sure you have this too.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, for sure.
Yeah. Being like Wall Street girly.
Yeah.
And then in real life, who is Vivian?
Yeah, exactly.
I think I don't think I actually distinguish between who I am online and who I am in person. Like, and I think people who meet me, they're like, wow, you're like literally
exactly
just
what
I see you online. Like it's actually funny because there are like Reddit threads with screenshots of me.
Girl, you should not be reading Reddit threads by yourself.
I know. But like there are funny ones. And the funny ones are like, oh, another nip slip, or like, oh, another where she looks like shit, because it's like I do not edit my content. I like press, like it's not polished content. Like I'm so unfiltered and I'm like literally like I think that for me, like I just make content about whatever I'm thinking about, you know, whatever I'm doing. But I would say that for me, like I think of August as literally the manifestation of like everything I care about and like what I want to see in the world. But I do not think of myself as August, right? Yeah. And I actually think about this a lot in our marketing strategy, where I am not the main poster on the August account.
Correct.
For the most part, like my face is not really on that, right? I might show up once a month, but like I'm not logged into the account. Like
you're not even logged in?
I can be logged in, but I like it's not on my phone.
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
Like I think of myself as like a top of funnel for August, but I do not think of like me equals August. I think of me being like the biggest cheerleader for August. But I love when people are like, oh, I didn't realize that you were the girl behind August. Like I love that. Yeah. And I love that so many of our customers have never heard of me, right? Yeah. And I think that for me, but I want it to be that if people know about me, they know about August. But not the other way around, right? And so I think about that a lot. And most of my job day to day is like Zoom calls. And
it's not sexy being a creator.
It's not sexy. Yeah. Like there's content creation, which is like me being in videos. And then there's like being an operating co-founder, which is like mostly emails and Zoom calls. Like it's literally, you know, I try to make these day in my life vlogs and they never perform well because most of my day is just sitting in front of a computer, like on Zoom.
We have had this conversation so many times because I'm like, oh, I wake up, immediately check my email. Yeah. And then I take a meeting. Then I eat a sad little lunch in front of like the kitchen sink.
Exactly.
It's like leftovers. And then I go back to my meetings and it's like, that was my day.
Yeah. There's no like, it's not like a cool, you know, day in my, but, and so and then for me, like, especially when we started, I was making like 100 TikToks a day. Yeah. Now I try to make like 5 a day. But so I'm making content like in the evenings, you know, and like, I think
I don't know how you're doing 5 a day, by the way. That's crazy.
But I think of August as like my day job. Like I work at 9 to 6 and then from 6 to midnight, I'm like contenting, working, you know, and what's exciting now is like, that's a whole other business, right? Like it's its own LLC. I have my own assistant. I have my own, you know, so much, there's a whole business of content creation, as you know. You have your agents, your manager, you know, the publicist, like that is its own business that I work from 6 to midnight, you know? And so I think of it as like my second job. And then who I am as a person, I probably like, I can do a better job of distinguishing that. But I I don't think that there is a line between being a creator and myself. And I think that I've come to terms with that, and I've actually really embraced that.
Just being your true natural self online is just easier.
Because content creation doesn't feel like a job to me. It's like, I love doing it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I will say there's some content that I make that I'm like, I am so proud of this. I'm so happy. I can't wait to release this. And then there's some content that I make that I'm like,
I have to make this video.
Not my best work. Let's just say that.
But your wedding content,
oh my God. You're going to bring up the wedding.
Okay, so I am like working on getting engaged. And when I say that, it's like, I fucking got a brand deal for this ring. Every day, my boyfriend, I'm like, where the fuck is my ring? You know, like I am working on getting engaged, and I'm so excited to make the content. Like I would say, like, love my boyfriend, excited for that. But like, I think probably a top reason I want to get engaged is the content.
Okay, but here's the thing that nobody tells you. On your wedding day and during your events, it's actually quite overwhelming, and you will not have your phone. So you are at the mercy of whoever's making that content for you. And in some cases, they do a great job. And in other cases, you're like, where is all of this? Like I have 3 videos from this entire event. I lost my phone, or I put it in my purse and I forgot about it. And then you're like, I have nothing.
No. And I mean, that's why we have this industry of content creation for weddings. Like, but I mean, I very much like, I'm very excited for the wedding content. And it's like probably
I'll send you my wedding video and you'll see it and you'll be like, oh my God.
Oh my God. And you had like the dream mood board wedding. My God. This bitch, her wedding was, when I tell you, I was like refreshing, like, oh my gosh. Your wedding was amazing.
You're so funny. That's so sweet. Thank you so much. But I have one final question to wrap up our interview. How has your work in the menstrual space affected your own relationship with your period?
I mean, I think it has made me so unapologetic. I mean, I literally, my whole wardrobe is like period themed fucking shirts. Like my shirt says gets period from a collab we did. Like, and I think most of what I wear is like period related, but also like, it means that when I bleed through my clothes, my first thought is not, oh shit, I'm embarrassed. I wonder if someone sees me. It's, oh my God, this is such good content. Like, that's what I think.
I'm dead.
And
I'd be like in tears running home.
No, I like immediately am like, oh my God, content. And like yesterday I got my period. I was like on my phone, on my toilet. I think I was trying to poop or something. And I was like wiped. And then I was like, oh, I got my period. And my first thought was, okay, gotta make my phone. And so literally I posted this video and I'm like naked on the toilet, like being like, I got my period, like with the bloody toilet paper. Like to me, it means that, and I think a misconception is people think I love my period. I hate getting my period.
Yeah, your stomach hurts, everything sucks.
That's why I care about period products, because I'm like, we might as well have a comfy period because this shit sucks.
Yeah.
And so for me, but it means that when I get my period, even though I hate getting my period, I'm excited because I'm like, wow, so much content is coming and this is gonna be so fun. Like, I'm training for the marathon right now.
Oh my gosh, good luck.
And this is my first, because I just started fucking training, my first period training for the marathon. So I'm like, content, this is great. And I have this like joy. I like love making content on my period. It's just so fun. And I love being able to connect with other people online who are like, I'm also on my period. We're synced up. Like, I love it. I love it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for making all of our periods feel so much more community-based. I absolutely hate my period. It sucks, but you are certainly making it easier. And thank you for being so mindful and thinking about those who don't necessarily have access to period products. I'm so grateful that you've been here and chatted with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank my partners at Marshall's for sponsoring this episode of Networth and Chill. Being responsible with your finances means taking care of future you. And thankfully, while you're looking out for the you of tomorrow, Marshall's is looking out for the you of today. They've got the latest on-trend and high-quality fashion, beauty, and home decor at a fraction of retail prices. So whether you're starting a new job, taking some overdue PTO, or just sitting at home planning your next move, Marshall's will make sure you look good doing it. Shop in-store or online to get the good stuff today. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Networth and Chill, part of the Vox Media Podcast Network. If you liked the episode, make sure to leave a rating and review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Got a burning financial question that you want covered in a future episode? Write to us via podcast@yourrichbff.com, Follow Networth and Chill Pod on Instagram to stay up to date on all podcast-related news, and you can follow me at Your Rich BFF for even more financial know-how. See you next week. Bye!